So we teach them to walk, talk, tie their shoes, make a bed. But here's a parenting challenge that is a bit more ambiguous. How do you teach kids to make connections? My next guest is selling summer as the perfect time to focus in on skills that will carry them through the next school year and through life. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson has 7 connection lessons to lean into at home. It's great to see you.
You too.
This is a smart list, and our conversation today will focus in large part on the teenage phase. And you say there are 2 things every teenager wants: friends and acceptance.
They do.
So what gets in the way of those things?
Well, they want those 2 things desperately. And often what we don't realize is that what gets in the way is their inability to have conversations, their inability to connect with these teenagers, with these friends that they want to be close to. They're just not quite sure how to do it. And we think we've been so far removed from it for so many years in that teenage phase. We can think that maybe it comes natural to our kids, that maybe they'll figure it out on their own. We need to teach them. We need to teach them how to do it. That's something that I do love about summer. Summer lends itself usually to a little more time with our kids because they're not gone at school all day. And we usually try to throw in some sort of, family something here and there. And so summer's a really good time to put some emphasis on some of these skills that they need in order to be prepared when the school year starts and to get them ready now. And summer's a good time to do that. And this is one of them.
I think back to my teenage years. I knew how to have a conversation, and I don't really recall my parents deliberately setting out to teach me this. Is this an area where parents need to be a little more deliberate in and at?
Yeah, and one way to recognize if you need to be more deliberate or not, because your parents probably did, you just don't recall that they were working those things in, right?
Okay.
And we'll kind of see that today. But a really good place to start as a parent is to take a step back and analyze, which means pay attention to how your kids communicate with you and how they communicate with their friends. Start taking a look at those things.
That will be the litmus test.
Right. For example, if I'm talking to one of our teenagers and they tend to be very defensive, they probably handle conversations with their own friends with some defensiveness. Right? If every time or oftentimes when I talk to one of them, they're quick to respond with fine, that's just fine, we'll do that, fine, okay. We can probably take that and go, we should work on that. I can help you with that, right? And hopefully we can. And recognize that that's probably also how they might be handling conversations with their own friends. Our teenagers tend to go into spaces where they automatically assume that any new role or room they walk into, they're walking into a room of enemies, of strangers. And so one thing we also want to teach them is that they're walking actually into a space that is full of friends. If they don't see it that way, they automatically go in defensive. Well, if they're automatically defensive, they're not going to be able to connect with someone. They're not going to be able to adapt and make friends if they're already on the defense.
It's kind of a relational extension of the abundance mentality, right? Like, this room is not out to get you.
It's exactly
this room,
right.
It's full of your friends. I like that.
And it's interesting because if you take a step back and we even analyze ourselves, we sometimes do all of these same uncomfortable things, right? Where we go and it's everyone's judging me or everyone's out to get me, instead of realizing, wait, this is a room full of friends. And I'm going to assume that right out of the gate. Not because I know, but because then I can show up as a best version of me. And that's what we want our teenagers to see. They're not trying to actually figure out if it's a room of friends or foes. They're trying to see it in a way that allows them to offer up connection to the people that they're with.
I love that. And it's not just showing up. A lot rides on their response. And you say there are 3 things that can help them to know what to say when the spotlight is shining their way.
Yeah, and these are very similar to the things we're analyzing. So they want to show up and not be defensive. They want to make sure that their responses aren't defensive. And we have to teach them how to not make what other people say about them. We want them to show up and not be know-it-alls. We've been in those conversations, even as adults, where you share something and the other person is quick to say, yeah, I already know that. Yeah, well, I've done that too. Yeah, well, my family and I, we always go do that. And when we hear that, it disconnects us from people. It shuts us down. If you'll observe your teenagers, that's a go-to often, right? Those types of responses. So we want to teach them how to respond. We want to teach them that just because someone else has done something doesn't mean that they're less because they haven't. We want to teach them that it's okay to not force other people to know that they're knowledgeable or that they know everything. We've got to teach them how to respond.
A magic move for any awkward situation, you say ask questions.
Ask lots of questions. We have to teach them this.
Again, I'm stunned how many adults could benefit from this lesson. I was in a social situation just a week ago, And there was this awkward lull, and I thought, somebody asked a question. Like, it's the most basic human bid to say, I'm interested in you, I care about you, I'm an outward-facing person.
That's exactly right. And remember, they want friendship and they want connection. They want that acceptance. So why would we not want them to recognize that asking questions is going to do that? The other thing about asking questions is if you're asking someone else questions about them, it means you are not overly talking about yourself. And so it means that as they're getting to know someone else, it's in contrast to, let me tell you more about me and more about me and more about me. And when we tell everyone all about us all the time, that disconnects us, right? We're back to defending myself, being enough, and showing you that. So those questions, it's really important that we teach them, how do you ask people questions about themselves? How do you say, how has your day been, without then saying, well, this is how my day was? We have to practice those things with our kids when it doesn't come natural to them.
You say we also have to teach the art of the entrance, like how to get into a conversation. This is tricky.
This is tricky. And you've probably seen it if you watch teenagers. You know, someone will come upon an already existing group and they'll run right into the center of it. I'm here, and announce themselves, or jump right in the middle of the pile to start communicating. That immediately disconnects people, right? Or they step right up to an existing group and they immediately have an opinion to interject into a situation that they actually don't know anything about quite yet. So we want to teach our teenagers how to come up behind that group and sit quiet for a minute, not force themselves into it, but just simply on the outskirts to analyze what's happening, to take stock or inventory of what's going on and what they're talking about.
That's an interesting word, analyze, how to analyze a conversation.
And we want them to do that. We want them to not just know how to enter those situations, but we want them to be able to analyze what's going on. We want them to understand verbal and nonverbal cues that are going on. For example, conversations that are comfortable tend to last between about 5 and 8 minutes. If you've exceeded that, we want them to know you might be pushing the limits of this conversation. If you're looking at someone's verbal cues and nonverbal cues, and they're consistently saying, oh, well, that's great, you know, I really should get back. You know, I got to get to my math, or I should be those are cues we want our kids to pick up on so that they can understand, oh, they're looking for this to end. Not I did something wrong, but I need to pick up on those. If they're always looking over their shoulder, or if they're always taking note of whoever else is in the hall or at the pool, probably means it's time for those things to end.
Something you wouldn't think to articulate to a younger mind, but they need that direction. We've got a quick 30 seconds. You do have a parenting strategy for the child who tends to exaggerate or even lie to build themselves up.
Yes, so when our kids are trying to lie or they exaggerate, it's most likely so that they can be accepted, right? So that they get attention. They want that. They think that if they tell those lies, people will be drawn to them and they'll get that attention and it will connect them. It does the exact opposite. And so the way we combat this as parents is we help them understand their worth. Our kids desperately, in order to connect to others, have to know that they're enough as is. They don't need to lie about a vacation they took. They don't need to exaggerate about their grades. They can actually say math is challenging to me, or I'm struggling in science. That vulnerability is what connects them to other people.
How do we teach that at home? How are we teaching them that they are enough in conversation or in connection?
Well, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we know it about ourselves, because they're going to immediately pick up on the fact that we're exaggerating or we're stretching truths to fit in.
So
if we can model that and be authentic, if we can let them see, a really great way to do that is help them understand that we can recognize what's challenging and what's real about our lives, hit it with an and also take it to a place where we're grateful for something. So if our children can help, or if we can help our children hear that gratitude from us, they will come to know that who they are is enough. It also means that we have to really be cautious of how we talk to them, because when we're downplaying their worth, they will then downplay their worth.
This was, again, a really smart list, a really, I think, thoughtful conversation on how parents can advance this important skill set at home. Thank you so much, Heather. You can learn more about Heather's private practice on our website. We will be right back.